All right. Hey, Patrick. Um, Patrick's name says Douglas Brown, but he's actually Patrick, a partner and executive search consultant for Halo Consulting. So thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for the invite, Teegan.
Yeah, absolutely. So go ahead and tell me a little bit about Halo and what you do.
Yeah, so Halo Consulting, we are I think now 4 month old and officially 3-person boutique recruiting firm. We work with mostly technology companies that are usually Series B or earlier. Usually they're growing or they're using search because they're actually growing. They, don't have enough internal HR recruiting teams themselves. And our focus is specifically at what we call the emerging leader level.
Okay.
So basically, that's everything in between the manager up to the VP. So kind of right below the C-suite and the board, right above the senior individual contributor, pretty much all for technology companies. So heads of product, heads of engineering, sometimes weird, system architecture leaders and things like that. But yeah, that's Halo.
Awesome. So what did you do before you went to Halo?
Yeah, so I'll give you the 10,000-foot overview of kind of my career and how I got here, and certainly didn't know that recruiting existed or that search was a thing when I graduated college. I graduated Madison in 2012 with an English degree. Actually, yes, like lived in my mom's basement for 6 months. Got an unpaid internship at DHR International, so they're a big like retained executive firm. So would do more senior stuff than we do today. Ended up working for their internal line of business called Jobplex. So that was kind of more aligned with the type of work that I'm still doing. I spent 5 years there, did everything from kind of senior finance and HR people to eventually, as I got deeper in, senior technology executives. We ran some kind of unique projects for Microsoft that involved them training military veterans and underrepresented demographics in New York City on technology skills, and then helping them to get jobs. So we built a kind of outplacement program for them. I got recruited to another company called Lucas Group after that. So Lucas Group was founded as a military recruiting firm. I had been doing a lot of work with the military and cybersecurity. Thought it'd be kind of a lot of good synergies there. But yeah, ended up getting there. And on my first day, the head of the practice who hired me was fired.
Oh,
Yeah, so I was kind of, had to roll with the punches there a little bit. But then ended up really trying to do a lot of the military work, the way that the business models worked at Lucas Group for their traditional tech recruiting and their military recruiting were different. So it was a little bit harder to collaborate than I'd anticipated. So I was just doing kind of normal executive tech search. A lot of it in cybersecurity up until they got hacked.
oh,
And so they got hacked, they got a new CEO, and that was, not the easiest conversation to have with clients. So I ended up going to True Search, which is a pure executive retained firm focused just on high growth PE and VC backed tech companies, and actually really enjoyed it. I was recruited by a former boss, and then one of my former colleagues, Doug Brown, who I worked with at Jobplex and Lucas Group. He ended up going off and starting his own thing. And I figured, if I can do it now during COVID, especially when I've got a buddy that's kind of already laid the groundwork, running my own firm is something I knew it would do eventually. So, just took the jump. So,
awesome. So capitalizing on this pandemic.
yeah, I don't know if capitalizing is the right word, but we're taking advantage of, the unique circumstances as much as possible.
Making lemonade out of lemons.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm a career coach. I started my career off at the Department of Labor, switched into opening up my own practice called Jolt Your Career. So I help job seekers write resumes, LinkedIn, or do coaching, like help people figure out how to transition into a new role, or how to set them up for success once they're hired by writing 30, 60, 90-day plans. So full gamut of, hey, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, to, hey, help me make sure I can get the most out of this opportunity. So right now I work with primarily mid to senior level leaders, but I have a special place in my heart for new grads. I graduated during the first recession, so I'm very empathetic to, you know, what new grads are going through during this time. So since you have a military background and an executive background, why don't we focus on them? I am volunteering for an organization called Project 1000 Hires, and their goal is to get as many people impacted by COVID as possible hired. So I've been doing different workshops and things like that, and they're like, yeah, but what is it that recruiters really want to know? How do you connect with them? How do you stand out from the crowd? So thank you for taking the time today to speak with me, to give people kind of like a candid inside view of what it is that you're looking for. So when you're working with these executives, like what makes one person stand out from the next?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you know, the thing to just keep in mind about the job search and when someone's talking to a recruiter, you know, there are different types of recruiters out there. There's, you know, agency recruiters like myself. You know, sometimes I might be doing, you know, at max 6 or 7 searches at a time for more senior roles, but other agency recruiters could be doing anywhere from 20 to 30. And then you have the in-house corporate recruiters that work directly for the company that would be hiring you. And everybody kind of looks for things that are a little bit different. When you're talking to a kind of a high volume agency recruiter, they're usually trying to check boxes with the job description. So it might be, you know, they see you mention a specific system, SAP, in your key skills section. They don't necessarily see all the context on how you use that in the last 3 jobs. So they give you a call to really determine, okay, you know, what is the extent of your experience there? But the tough thing about it is you know, it could be a million different things that set you apart. And usually the thing that sets you apart is going to be unique to the position or company that's looking for you. So, you know, in the tech space, you know, a lot of folks are looking specifically for individuals that come from other companies that they look at as competitors, or that also have a really good brand. And, you know, someone there knows, oh, I remember 2 years ago, they were growing really quick. So a lot of times it's just the name of the company that you were last at. I think when somebody's trying to think about how to stand out in general, yeah, really the way to stand out is to focus on what you're actually applying to, because you know you can't be qualified for something you're just not qualified for. Being really qualified for a job will make you stand out, but you kind of need to work backwards from the, you know, what am I targeting? Not just the, you know, the bullet points on the job description, but thinking about the space the company is in. You know, are they also, you know, an industrial manufacturing company compared to, you know, your industrial manufacturing companies? So I think that the way to stand out is to be more selective about what you apply to and spend a little bit more time kind of ferreting out where those opportunities might be.
So would you recommend to job seekers to apply online or to spend the majority of their time networking, like leveraging their brand?
So yes, you know, the world that we live in, you need to do all of the above all the time. And so just thinking about the online application process. So, you know, of every person that gets a job next quarter, 25% of those people will be getting jobs that were never posted. And of all the jobs that people apply to this quarter, 10 to 25%, especially if you're working with aggregator job search engines like Indeed or Dice or ZipRecruiter or Monster, you know, ones that have web crawlers that just kind of congregate or aggregate a bunch of postings for a bunch of different sites. 10 to 25% of those jobs are going to be dead links or not being recruited for anymore. So you're really only getting at 50% of the actual market when you're using the online channel. Now that's a big part of the market, and you know, you do have to play that numbers game. You know, I think the thing that people get caught up with on the online application side is, you know, not each application is created equal. You just because you spend an hour tailoring a resume, looking for a job, following up with a recruiter, that time spent does not necessarily equate directly to you getting a call back, because there's so much stuff behind the scenes that's happening that could have nothing to do with whether or not you're actually qualified. Like the recruiter could be on vacation. They could have 30 roles that they're recruiting for, but they only have time to focus on 15 for this month. They could have forgot they had the posting up. They could have 3 people already interviewing and they're just keeping it up just in case. So, they could be, looking at your resume, asking the hiring manager to give them feedback and just waiting. So you do have to leverage the online side of things. You've got to apply there just to kind of give yourself a chance. But I would suggest you don't really spend more than usually 10 to 15 minutes at max per application in terms of finding the right one and then customizing a resume.
Okay.
Networking, you have to do as well. That's how you're going to get that other 50% of the jobs out there. That can be the thing I think people get wrong about networking is they look at it almost too broadly and without a lot of intention. So you need to think about going, not just who can you talk to that might have a connection, but what is your ask going to be of them and how will you make it easy on them to help you out? Having a forwardable email set up that's got your resume attached, a quick introduction of you that they can forward to their network is helpful. Looking at the career pages of companies, if you're connecting with someone there, even if it's not about a job. So just making sure that you bring intent to each of those networking conversations. It's great if you meet somebody else that, is in the same space as you, but, you not maybe as helpful as you'd like all the time.
Yeah. So I posted a thread on LinkedIn just asking candidates what they wanted to know specifically from a recruiter. So I've got a couple of them for you. So like the dirty little question is, why do recruiters ghost candidates?
So the answer to that is because recruiters are not the most professional or respectful people out there. And I really hate to say that, and it pains me. And, not ghosting or going quiet on candidates is something that's really important to me and my colleagues at Halo, because, we understand that experience. The reason that you're actually getting ghosted is, it's a couple of things. And, I will preface all this by saying, no matter why you're not hearing back, whether it's because you're a bad fit or, it's a bad recruiter, you deserve to be followed up with. It's a common courtesy thing. That doesn't mean you're going to get it. But this is an explanation, not an excuse.
Yeah.
So, a lot of times what's happening is they may just not be getting feedback on the position and they're waiting for someone else to get back to them. They might just be moving at such a fast speed and working on such a high volume of roles that week to week or even day to day, they're moving on to new positions. It could be that you're not a fit and the recruiter is lazy. It could be that the job closed and they have a lot of different candidates that are reaching out to them and they just decided we're not going to spend time on this. Rarely, if ever, will not hearing back be because, you actually are a fit and they're just trying to find something for you. So it's always okay to follow up directly. Every 5 business days or so is never going to be annoying. After 3 or 4 weeks, if you still haven't heard anything, I would suggest don't beat a dead horse. But also things happen where, you might apply to a job with a big company that, hires lots of software engineers. You interview for one job, all of a sudden they ghost you. And then 3 months later, you get an email or a call back from a different recruiter. So it could be a lot of things. The more time you spend kind of thinking about it, the more frustrating it is because you don't have control. You don't have the actual visibility or transparency. It is the recruiter's fault, not your fault. You should be getting, even courtesy feedback. But those are some of the things that are probably happening.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you being candid about it because I know it's a hard time for everybody right now. So just having that question of, like, obviously we can't control it, but why is it happening, kind of helps people cope with it a little bit more. And
Mm-hmm.
you gave a lot of good different scenarios on potentially why it's happening. So another one of the questions was, how would you recommend people reach out to recruiters, to network with them or to stay on their radar, or if you think time is best used to network with people within the organization versus going straight to the recruiter?
So yeah, I think all of the above. If you're going to reach out to a recruiter, the things that are important are, number one, if you've actually applied to a job, include the link, include the job number, attach your resume, and just make it clear why you're reaching out. You know, say, hi, my name is X. I applied to this job. Here's the link. Would love to get some feedback. Um, you know, don't put a cover letter as text in the email. Don't put, a big letter, to me about why you're a fit for the job. If you're not hearing back from something you've applied to, it's, maybe sometimes, maybe 25% of the time, it's because they just haven't noticed you or looked at the resume. A lot of times it may be because they decided you're not a fit and just haven't prioritized telling you that.
Okay.
So less is more, and have a clear ask, and then make it easy on me. Like if you're asking for me to, give you a 20 to 30-minute call to do some networking and there's not a specific job we're talking about, I might do that on a Friday if, not too much is going on. But if I've got 30 different jobs I'm recruiting for and you want to have a 30-minute conversation and I'm already running behind on 2 calls, it's, probably won't be a priority. If you're asking for me to let you know if you're still being considered or if the position is still open, that's a much easier, yes or no email for me to get back to you on. Another thing that I would mention when reaching out to the network, it's kind of the same thing as recruiters, except you can ask for a little bit more, but, make it clear why you want to network. Like, what does networking mean? It means something different to everybody. The reason we're networking usually is because we need a job. You don't need to hide away from that or shy away from it. You shouldn't expect the person you're networking with to necessarily have a direct connection or be the person that's the decision maker. So asking them about who else they recommend you reach out to, or if there's an email you can reach out to, asking your network to use their network is helpful. But yeah, in general, less is more. Have a clear ask.
Awesome. So how do you go about finding candidates for your clients?
So we focus on always passive candidates. So we use a couple of different channels. LinkedIn obviously is a really big one, but more and more for a bunch of different reasons, we're asking other people in our network to make recommendations. And sometimes that's a direct introduction. Sometimes that's sometimes it's, I'm not a fit, but I'm part of a, networking group and I know this guy and he might be a really good fit. Why don't you send me an email and I'll see if he's interested? Or it might be that, we've got somebody that we've placed before, or we have a good relationship for whatever reason, who is, a part of a bigger group, a bigger network. It might be something formal. It might be a Slack channel. But if you've got a good rapport there, a lot of folks, especially at the executive level, have their own executive networks and will, for the appropriate opportunities, publicize your jobs for you. And then it's very much passive hunting. So it's, big LinkedIn searches. Usually, we're being asked to go after a very, kind of narrow list of target companies. And then we map out the actual organization structure of those companies for product management team or the engineering team. And then we kind of go down from the top. Okay, who's the right level leader here based on their growth? So usually the candidates we're looking for are not looking for a job. If you have a job, you look like a better candidate. So that's, that is also just kind of unique to the level and the space that we're in at Halo.
Okay.
But that's kind of our process.
Okay. So you look for companies kind of map it out. And then when you're looking at different LinkedIn profiles, what are some of the things that stand out for you on their profiles? Like, do you like a headline that has a bunch of keywords in it, or like a tagline for how they're effective with the company? Do you like more information in the experience section or less? Like, what is your preference?
So I like a tagline that's directly relevant to whatever, my motivation is for reaching out to them. So again, it's one of those things like, the keywords might help you show up in, different searches or more searches, but, I don't really care what your headline is unless, it's saying that you're the person I'm looking for. And that, there's no one size fits all kind of template for that. Every search and every company is a little bit different. Number one though, pictures stand out. If you look like you're catfishing me, I might be, a little bit less interested in talking to you. When you're looking at somebody's career history, the actual official company pages being associated with like their graphic logo on LinkedIn, as opposed to just the kind of generic default building. Those stand out because they mean this is an actual legitimate company that I can do more research on. I always advise LinkedIn is the place to be inclusive about your career experience. It's kind of like if the job search is, a jungle, LinkedIn is your machete. You're trying to cut through all the brush, whereas the resume is like a scalpel, and that's for, one individual application to one company. So less is more on the resume, more is okay on LinkedIn. And then in a resume or LinkedIn, we're looking for the kind of clear metric-based accomplishments that are usually about team size and growth, revenue size and growth, and then your specific responsibilities as a member of the leadership team. Like, it's great if your company grew by, 50 people, but were you the one doing the hiring and setting that strategy? Or was your boss doing that and you were, making the phone calls?
Okay.
One isn't necessarily better than the other. It depends on the role. It depends on the level. But those kind of key numbers, revenue, team size, specific technologies, in my space at least, and then just a clear understanding of like what your responsibilities were within the rest of the organization.
So for the executives watching this, if your resume does not look like a performance evaluation with quantified scope, quantified accomplishments, it is time to rewrite it, revamp it. Awesome. That's awesome feedback. So interviewing sucks for the most part. Sometimes you have to put together projects or, different sample things. So tell me about a time when you bombed an executive interview. Like when you were interviewing someone as the recruiter, like when did you just totally screw up?
Well, yeah. So actually the first, I got a couple of these, but the first ever head of chief product officer search that I was doing is actually a VP of product management. And I was younger. I dove right in. I said, sign me up. And I basically, with a lot of autonomy, I felt very confident in what I was doing. And I went and I, found a bunch of people, put them in a, list, sent out these emails, crafted a message, and then went and got on the phone and would ask them all these questions about, their growth and, who they reported to. And we ended up going to the client call with 3 candidates that were basically all engineering people instead of product people. They had a product development title instead of a product management title. I, at that time, did not realize there was that big of a difference. It was a confidential search, so I wasn't able to share many details. So the candidates weren't picking it up. But I would, ask these candidates all these product management questions about, how they, leverage their analyst teams, how much time they are spending with the customers, and, how involved they are in like the long-term vision and strategy and road mapping. And I'd get these like, weird answers that weren't just yes or no, or yeah, I've done that a lot, or here's how I did that here. Yeah, so those were ones where I didn't know they were really bad interviews until hindsight. But I basically, interviewed executives for, the wrong job that they were not actually qualified for. And then even worse, I went and sent those to the client and said, here are three great product managers. No,
Nothing like a little bit of a learning curve there.
Yeah, big learning curve.
That is something I've noticed, that a lot of times recruiters get thrown into the mix. So when job seekers are reaching out, or job seekers will get really excited when a recruiter reaches out to them, and then they'll find out it's because it's an entry-level recruiter who doesn't have as much experience. Yeah. Like my husband Leon is an executive recruiter, and he says, I'm a sharpshooter, not a shotgun. If I'm reaching out to you, it's because you're the one I want to be speaking to. Where other people, will just make the list and then send out these mass emails, and it kind of gets people's hopes up. So it is a little bit of a learning curve for candidates and recruiters. I mean, we're all people at the end of the day to get it right.
Yeah.
So it's
I
can only imagine how your client was like,
oh, I got taken off the search. It was the first search that I was doing at True Search about a year ago. It was a really bad start. So I didn't get to talk to the client again after that. So, one thing I will say, like if I could give anybody any interview advice, try to direct the conversation or drive the conversation yourself as much as possible. You can be the one asking the questions as much as answering them. You can't just shut them down and say, I'm not going to answer that question, but you can start by asking your questions about the job or the circumstances, or start by telling them, hey, let me tell you about my background and what I'm a really good fit for, or here's what I saw in this role, or here's what I'd like to find out on this call. You don't go into the interview like, you're there and someone's going to run down their list and ask you questions, because they will. And, a lot of times they won't even know how relevant their questions are. So don't be afraid to kind of, hijack the conversation again. And, if they don't get all the questions answered that they want, they'll call you back again. So.
Okay. Awesome advice. And so that would be when speaking with a recruiter.
Yeah. With anybody, even with an executive.
Okay. What advice, so like going from the interview with you, the recruiter, then to going to interviewing with your client, the hiring manager, what do you, as the recruiter, help prep the candidate?
Yeah, so we help prep the candidate, and we also help prep the client. So, there's, sometimes if it's a super technical role, there's this notion of you don't want to give somebody the answers before they take the test. But even then, you can at least let somebody know what it's going to be about, what they could use to study. A lot of times the prep is not going to be around, but good prep is not about how to look qualified for the job. It's about how to prepare for the interview based on, what we can expect to happen. So if it's going to be a, initial 30-minute phone call, you should be prepared to just give a brief introduction of yourself, have maybe one or two key important questions ready to go, and make sure that you've done some research on the person that you're talking to. If it's an hour-long video interview, then you need to be prepared to dive a lot deeper, probably into some specific things. If you're talking to the chief product officer first, they might have questions for you about the way that you've worked with customers. If during the next interview, you're going to be talking to this chief technology officer, they might have more questions for you about how you've worked with the engineering team. So what we're doing in prep is trying to make sure not only that the candidate knows what to expect, but that they feel comfortable that they've got the right stories that they can pull out, and kind of giving them an opportunity to just use us as a sounding board.
Awesome. That seems like a great advantage to working with like a headhunting firm or an agency compared to just applying directly to the company. Do you see any other advantages or any other trends in companies going more contract or working with search firms versus direct hires?
So there's always an advantage in working with somebody that's an expert in the space and has more time and bandwidth than you. It ends up being a question about P&L. At the end of the day, it's how much money is the right person worth at this level. And selfishly, as a recruiter, I would say you can't put a number on finding the right person. But, the reality is you can't just, pay someone else to find every single person that you hire. So I don't think there's any disadvantage to working with an agency recruiter. You do get exposed to more. Sometimes, depending on the level, the process might be more transactional. Oftentimes though, even with the prep, that's something that is, that will help to orient the right candidate, but that won't help the wrong candidate, do well.
Okay.
So yeah, I would encourage everybody to work with recruiters in any capacity that they, possibly can. So
since you said that you primarily recruit passive candidates, what if there is an active candidate that was affected by the pandemic in the technology space? Potentially you might have a client that needs their skill set or in the future will need their skill set. What's the best way to someone to reach out to you?
So I encourage everyone to reach out to me directly all the time. I will get back to everybody, even if it's just to say, thanks for reaching out. I'll keep your resume here in my file. And when I have something, I'll let you know. Feel free to check in anytime. The reality is we're only working on a couple of searches. We've got several clients, and even if sometimes we've got a client that, we're not doing a search for today, but we know always needs really senior data scientists. That just varies case by case and client by client, and also timing is a big thing. So if you think we might be working on something, just reach out, share your resume and your background, make it clear what you want and you're asking for. And, it's easy for me to take a look at the resume, think, okay, do I have a job I'm recruiting for today? Do I have a client that might be interested? And then I would get back and say, hey, let's set up a quick call. But yeah, it's not like, it's not that big of a burden to receive an email from somebody. And you'd think that it is with how low the response rates are for people when they work with recruiters. But, the way that we work, anyone can reach out. We're going to let you know yay or nay if we've got something. It's pretty rare that, we will have something where we meet someone like that and it works out. And I think, frankly, that's just because a lot of the folks that use that method kind of take the same numbers based approach as you might, with applying to jobs. But yeah, it is not a burden to reach out. If you reach out to a recruiter and share a resume and you don't hear back, probably because they just don't have anything. But definitely okay to just reach out directly, email or LinkedIn. Make sure you share the resume and just be clear about what you're looking for and what you're asking me to do.
Cool. Okay, so just a couple quick preferences in regards to executive IT resumes. Do you like say a CEO of a company gave a candidate a letter of recommendation? Do you like a snippet of that quote on the resume, or keep it off? Keep it on LinkedIn?
So, this is probably not going to be the, answer that everyone wants to hear, but resumes are not that important. They are a tool to get you an interview or into a conversation. The higher level you are, the less important they become. The reason that, my, startup in Chicago wants to talk to a vice president of engineering is not because they looked at the resume and saw all the boxes checked. It's because they know the companies that they've been at have had high growth trajectories. This person was the one leading the engineering team. That's good enough. I've got 3 vice president of engineering candidates interviewing this week and next. None of them have shared a resume. Client hasn't asked for one. We've got their LinkedIn profiles. We have in-depth phone calls where I'm, going through each role. Why'd you move? Who did you report to? How big was your team? How did the revenue grow? How'd the product evolve? So we're going to take all of those notes anyway when we talk to you. Our notes are probably going to be 5 times as long as your resume. So that, in general, I don't think continuing to spruce up a resume is, always the best time investment.
Yeah, they can just hire me to write it for them.
Yes.
And they can focus on networking.
And you know what, that's the thing about the resume is it is less important the higher up you get, but you have to have a good one in order to just get to the first conversation. But it's the idea that it's more than just a tool to get one conversation makes people spend 4 hours on every single version. And then you hit a wall where you're like, oh, I don't think I'm really qualified for this one. And it's, the done is better than perfect a lot of times. But with with the CEO recommendation, and so that is something that, is going to be dependent usually on who the CEO is, what the company is, and what the job is that they're applying to.
Okay.
In general, a recruiter doesn't care if the CEO at your last company gave you, a thumbs up or down.
Okay.
As you get to final stages, if they're, and there's reference checks, they are going to want to know about that, but, they're going to want to talk to that CEO. A lot of times too, what we'll do at our level is if we know that there's a mutual connection between a candidate and somebody else at the company or that we've worked with, we'll call their old boss and ask for a back channel reference. So if you think there might be people that are executives and would speak highly of you that you kind of want to direct folks to, I think it's okay to name drop them and by title in your resume. Worked with CEO Ken Jennings to, do this initiative or that initiative. Then if I do care about what the CEO thinks, you're making it really easy on me to figure out who I should reach out to. And you're exerting a little bit of control over who the back channel references are. But yeah, references are important at kind of the interview or final interview stage at the executive level. And I think less important at the resume stage for what we work on.
Awesome. What about comp? Do you think that, like, as a recruiter, you obviously want to know what somebody's number is, but as a candidate, they don't always want to give that number. So how do you find a happy medium between the two? Like, do you prefer ranges, or do you, like, what would your recommendation be? Not as a recruiter, but as a candidate, what would you recommend?
So my recommendation is, number one, it's okay for you to ask what the compensation is. Somebody asks you what your compensation is, you can ask, well, what's the target compensation for this role? If they're really trying to nail you down, it's usually pretty good to give a range, but it all depends on what your goal, is of looking for a job in the first place. If you're an active job seeker, you need to, get something sooner rather than later, give a range. Don't zero in on a specific number. And whenever possible, also mention, I'm looking at this or that range, but really it will depend on the opportunity. Try to do a little bit of research beforehand before you talk to folks. Glassdoor is really helpful. Won't have all the info there, but if you're saying, well, I saw on Glassdoor that the average compensation for this position at your company is X, something in that range I'd be comfortable with. That's a very strong, message to send, that not only do you know what you're worth, but that you've actually spent time researching the company before the call. And then the last thing I'd mention is just be transparent, especially when you're working with the recruiter. We have to talk about comp all the time. We have no problem pushing to get you more. We get paid usually more if you get paid more, although it's not always like that. But if you're transparent, you can kind of get, you would hate to be in a situation where you interview for something, you keep your cards close to the chest on comp, and then you find out that they can only offer you the lowest end of your 80 to 120K salary that you were looking for. You can say, I was making X amount in my last role. Different situation now that I've been laid off because of COVID, but ideally I'd like to be as close to, if not a little bit above, where I was at. I think don't give a single number. That's definitely a bad idea. But turn around the question, ask the recruiter, the person you're talking to, what the comp is, give a range if they really want to, nail you down. And at the end of the day, don't be afraid to share, to be transparent, and just, kind of give them the context as to why you might be open.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. If there are any companies out there that are watching this right now, what kind of companies would you want to reach out to you?
Yeah, so any technology or tech-enabled services business anywhere in the US, you're probably going through a period of really high growth, or you've got a lot of new customers, you've just gotten a new investment, you're trying to figure out how do you find maybe it's one right executive, maybe it's 3 director level engineers, or it's a super niche test automation architect. You don't have your own HR team. You don't have your own recruiting team. You need the sniper, not the person with the shotgun shooting from the hip. You should reach out to us. And if we're not the best potential search partner, we certainly have the network and we'll refer you to who could be. But yeah, smaller tech startups, folks that need to do a national search but only have a local presence. Maybe you need to keep a search confidential for some reason. We get asked to replace co-founders a lot of times.
You better watch out, Patrick.
Yep. Yeah, right. But yeah, anyone that, I'm very happy to be a resource to anyone that reaches out if I can. Promise not to ghost you.
Awesome. Well, that is a great message. Is there anything else that I didn't ask that you would want to recommend to any candidates that in particular have been affected by the pandemic?
Yeah, I think, I work as a career coach with a lot of folks, so I'm seeing this every day. But the hard part about the job search is usually not the clicking the apply button. It's all the embarrassment and sometimes shame that comes with feeling like you've been laid off. You can't earn money. You've got to ask for things, instead of being able to provide them. And the nature of the way that this system works is you do 10 applications, you don't hear back from any. You get 3 interviews, 2 recruiters ghost you. One says they went with someone with more experience. You're going to get rejected 10 to 100 times more than you're going to get a positive response. You can't get too high with the first callback, and you can't get too low with the rejections. And just take it 24 hours at a time. Do something every day. Don't get frustrated. It's you can't control so much of this, but if you literally just keep showing up and doing something, the universe tends to work the rest out.
Awesome. Well, I love that advice. Well, Patrick, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge today. I'm sure everyone who views this will appreciate your feedback. Tell Doug I said hi, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Teegan. This was great. Anytime.
All right. Thank you so much.